dropped. They went against those Khorasan targets, 8 Tomahawk missiles from U.S. warships firing against those targets, weapons facilities, leadership targets, anything that the U.S. could get at Khorasan with to try and disrupt their planning. They're assessing that right now. They believe they were effective if it all works out. They say here at the Pentagon they believe they have disrupted and ended their ability to plot against the United States. We shall see if that proves to be true. The second round of strikes against ISIS targets further into northern Syria. That's what everybody expected them to go after. Again, leadership, communications, anything they could get to stop ISIS from being able to communicate amongst the troops, to pass orders, to try and essentially stop them in their tracks. But again, the battle damage assessment is ongoing. We will have to see what the Pentagon has to say down the road very quickly, Anderson, about what they really believe they accomplished.
Is it clear kind of a timeline? Obviously, they said that the Pentagon was saying today this is just the beginning. Just about everybody in Washington was saying that, including the president. But in terms of actually having targets that they can reach, how active is this bombing campaign going to be in the next couple of days? Do we know? Well,
I think that is the most interesting question right now. They hit about 20 pre-planned targets. So these were stationary targets, essentially. They had done reconnaissance on them. They knew where they were. Stationary targets that were relatively simplistic to go after because they knew the location. Now the hard work begins. Where do you go from here? What is the next list of targets? What else can you hit that would really disrupt ISIS and the Khorasan? What can you get to keep them stopped and move them back from continuing their advance? It is going to be very interesting to watch over the next couple of nights. Will there be more strikes? How long do they do battle damage assessment? When do they move on to developing additional targets that they can hit?
Barbara Starr, I appreciate the update. Thanks. A short time ago, I talked about the tempo and the duration of the airstrikes, as well as the limitations of airstrikes with Pentagon spokesman Rear Admiral John Kirby. Admiral Kirby, you said this morning that, quote, last night's strikes were only the beginning. The Pentagon's director of operations said today that the time frame is years. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, 100%. We know, we're very clear-eyed, Anderson, about the threat that we're facing from ISIL. So are our regional partners, which speaks to the coalition we put together last night. Everybody knows this is going to be a long, difficult struggle, and I think we're all steeling ourselves for exactly that.
Syrian human rights organizations reporting civilian casualties as collateral damage from the bombing. Can you confirm that, and how big a concern is that for the Pentagon at this point?
It is always a concern for us, Anderson. As you know from reporting our operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, nothing we take more seriously than that. And we always investigate if we have any indication that we have caused collateral damage or civilian casualties. I can tell you right now that we have no such indications that we caused any civilian casualties or collateral damage. We're watching those reports. We take them seriously. And if we have to, we'll certainly investigate and look into it.
An important component, obviously, of all this is ground operations against ISIS in Syria, in Iraq. How long a time frame will it be to actually train and equip so-called moderate rebels inside Syria?
It's going to take us about 3 to 5 months, now that we have the authorization, to recruit and vet a sufficient number of trainees. Then it's going to take another 8 to 12 months on top of that vetting process to field them, to actually get them trained and back into Syria where they can start defending their communities and their fellow citizens. It's going to take a while. We've been very honest about that.
Is there anyone on the ground that the U.S. would like to see right now capable of taking advantage of these airstrikes that the U.S. is engaging in?
Well, it's not like the moderate opposition doesn't exist now. They do. What we're talking about is trying to improve their capabilities over time, but they're there right now.
Right, but their priority, their first priority, and we've heard this from them publicly, is the overthrow of the Assad regime. How do you get them to make ISIS their first priority?
Well, we understand that, well, first of all, they're not a monolithic group, and not all of them speak for everybody else. And we know that they're fighting the Assad regime. That's part of the reason we want to train and equip them as well. But they're also getting slaughtered. They're also being threatened by ISIL inside Syria, and we know that they have to address that threat, that they want to. Step one in this process, quite frankly, is to get them a basic set of military skills, leadership skills, organizational skills, so that they can defend their communities and their fellow citizens. Then to go after ISIL and the Assad regime. And the ground forces that matter most, Anderson, are our indigenous ground forces, Iraqis on the Iraq side of the border, a good, solid, moderate Syrian opposition on the Syrian side.
Talking about the Iraqis on the Iraqi side of the border, to rebuild the Iraqi military, which was obviously trained by the United States, had equipped by the United States, but under al-Maliki, you had generals paying to become a general. Corruption is rife in the Iraqi military. How long do you see that process to get them to a place where you can vet and retrain a general corps and actually get troops that are actually willing to stand up in battle?
I think there's a little misconception about the Iraqi security forces. They certainly need more growth and development, no question about that. But it is already an existing army, and we now have a new unity government in Iraq that has pledged itself to plurality and to responsive government, to properly training and resourcing their army, and it's their army, not ours.
But wait, but you said you have a new Iraqi government. I mean, you got a president and a prime minister. They haven't appointed a defense minister. They can't figure out who should be the interior minister. The parliament's a mess. So actually getting them to reach out to Sunni groups, getting them, I mean, they can say one thing, but actually getting them to rebuild the Iraqi military, I mean, you got to admit, that's going to take a long time.
It could very well take a while. Again, everybody's clear-eyed about this, but all the vectors that we see moving inside Iraq and in Baghdad are in the right direction. Clearly there's challenges, and they still have a ways to go.
In regards to strikes targeting this group Khorasan, CNN is being told that there was no intelligence indicating they had chosen a specific place or building, but that they had acquired materials and were in advanced stages of planning. Is that your understanding as well?
I'd really rather not get into too much intelligence issues here on TV, but what I can tell you is that we know that they were very close to the end game in their planning. We don't know exactly where the attack that they were planning would take place. That's why we said we think it was either in Europe or the homeland. So there's some information that we probably didn't have all the way down to the exact detail. That said, we know they were close. We know that they had a very serious intent to conduct an attack on Western targets, and that drove a lot of the urgency last night.
Admiral John Kirby, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Security advisor at the end.
Well, a reminder, 360 is live throughout the next 2 hours here from the UN, and the CNN, of course, is live all night long, bringing you all the latest developments, as always. Be sure you set your DVR so you can watch our program whenever you'd like. Coming up next, digging deeper into one of the reasons given for striking now, this Khorasan group. Who exactly are they, and why are they considered so dangerous, and why have many of us just hearing about it for the first time? President Obama's Homeland Security Advisor is up next on what's being done to keep Americans safe.